be great to just kick off. And apologies, Jocelyn, I love that message, just to say I'll stop talking. So thanks very much for your question there, and your comment. Really broken the ice and kicked us off to a great start here. So, hey, everybody. And thank you so much for joining this investor webinar here for Future Magic Brewing. I've got Sean and Reese here, who really are just, fantastic founders here in this business. And it's been great to work with you guys all the way up towards launching your expression of interest campaign on the Birchal website and running your expression of interest campaign on the website. I have no doubt that a number of you who are here attending today are very familiar with that fact and have gone ahead and expressed your interest to invest into the company. So today we will be covering a lot more details about the company, what it's being able to achieve so far, and really what its future looks like in the presentation that the guys have prepared. In the second half of today's webinar, we're going to be covering off a Q&A session, and that really includes all the questions that you'd like to ask about the business itself. I'm Robin Holt, and I'm representing Birchal here today, hosting today's session. And really, I'd love to throw over to you guys to quickly introduce yourselves before I just run through a couple of other items.
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. I'm Sean, Managing Director and Head Brewer at Future Magic.
G'day everyone, my name is Reese Pike and I am the Creative Director of Future Magic Brewing Company.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks, guys. And for everybody who's attending here today and perhaps hasn't used Zoom before, hopefully you have. But what we would love for you to do is to ask as many questions at any point in time in the Q&A box. Everybody can see those questions, and so you can upvote the questions that you'd really like us to make sure that we do ask within the time frame that we've got today. I'm hoping that we'll be able to cover off all topics and all questions within the time that we've got allocated for this webinar today. As mentioned, we'll be kicking off with a presentation, but please do just drop your questions in there and as and when they pop into your head. And we'll endeavor to get to them as soon as we're done with that presentation. So I guess there's nothing else to cover, and really just hand over to you guys to run through that presentation.
Cool. Thanks, Robin. I'll start sharing my screen. All right. Can you see that now?
That looks perfect.
Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, as Robin said, guys, welcome. I'm Sean, I'm here with Reese, and we're going through a short presentation, and then there'll be a little Q&A section at the end. But the first question that a lot of people have had for us as a new company is, who are we? How did Future Magic begin? As I said before, I'm the Managing Director and Head Brewer, and my brewing experience started a couple of years ago at I've been brewing for one of the bigger craft breweries here in Queensland, Ballistic Beer Co. And that came out of a love originally of home brewing and really turning beer into my passion and getting experience in a commercial brewery to help make this venture worthwhile. I've already had experience in other industries, so I worked in IT for a while, worked in the music industry, pretty varied. How about yourself, Reese?
Yeah, my background originally is from industrial design, and that's kind of led me into doing all of the branding and brand voice for our company. Also have had a bit of a background in architectural technology and have worked over the last decade as a national and international trainer for a large technology company, training people in software and so forth. Yeah. I became pretty obsessed with beer about 20 years ago, but I really became passionate about documenting my beer experience about 8 years ago, where I started a craft beer Instagram called Instabrews, and had the intention with that just to basically travel and meet as many people as possible in the beer industry around Australia and around the world, and visited countless tap rooms to study beer business models and so forth. And over the last couple of years, I've focused more so on developing this business, more so than that social media side of things. But yeah, really excited to have a chat with everyone today and want to welcome everyone along.
Yeah, and in terms of how Future Magic began, we were working at the same company of different sites. We moved to the same site and we got introduced to each other as, you guys need to start a brewery together. So we did the only sane thing we could think of and decided that was a great idea. And a little while later now, here we are. It began as just this pipe dream that we were going to have, and everything that we were doing outside of that particular job, it all was bent upon making this work. So we started out by saying, you know, what's common to both of us? What are we both passionate about? What do we want to make this brewery about? And we're looking at stories, because beer for us is a vehicle for telling stories. You know, nothing better than sitting down and having a drink and a yarn with some mates. And the thing that really stuck out to us, one story was the story of the magic stick story, which, for those that don't know, dates back years and years ago, well before modern times, back to old farmhouse breweries where beer used to be produced as a safe alternative to water, because you couldn't store water at the time. They made beer. It was a low alcohol beer to feed and nourish farmhouse workers, and beer was really at the center of their culture. And it was stirred. The only way that they could get it to work, beer was magic, unless it wouldn't work unless it was stirred with a magic stick, which, unbeknownst to them, had yeast on it. But they attributed the success of the beer to these magic sticks. So they became like family heirlooms, handed down for generations, or traded and bartered around for goods. And it was this whole community around beer and the production of it. So that's what led us to want to begin Future Magic. And now I want to give a bit of an update on where we're currently at. So the story so far, once we did have the name Future Magic, we decided to think about where should we start in actually building this thing. And there's so much that hinges upon the location that you're building your brewery in, that nothing else can fall into place until you have that. So that's where we started. After a fair few cold starts and more than fair share of disappointment, as most people that have tried to look for a brewery site can attest to, we finally landed on the place we're in now, in Manila Street, so just down the road from Black Hops Brisbane. Good neighbours that they've been. And then from there, we started getting a fair bit of help, because as any new business owner, you've never run that particular business before, so you look for people that have, and you get consultants and you get advice and help from the industry. In my opinion, you're kind of crazy if you don't try to do that. And the industry has had a massive outpouring of support. It's a really supportive industry that wants to see each other succeed, because if I can help someone else to start a brewery using my experience and make a better beer as a result, the whole industry is lifted and elevated. And that's the culture within the industry that we have received so far. And I'll go on to a couple of successes and things in a few slides time, but I really wanted to get onto campaign update. So we're in the expression of interest. We're in the final week of the expression of interest phase. For those that don't know, that might be coming to this for a bit of information, these campaigns run in, I'm going to say 2.5 phases. There's the expression of interest phase, where you're just expressing interest and you're letting the company know to what level you're expressing interest in investing. And then you kick over to where the offer is live, and this is where the 0.5 comes in. The first 2 days is where it's open privately only to people that have invested so far. And that's because some of these campaigns, especially for popular companies and attractive companies, they can close quite quickly. And we really want to give people that have gone to the effort of expressing interest, we want to really give them the opportunity to not miss out. And that private offer is perfect for that. So that's happening in 6 days, and then the public offer will be 2 days after that. So far, we've had around, I think it's 364, 365 expressions of interest, and with numbers indicating so far a pretty good, pretty solid raise for us. So we're really happy with that, including quite a few high net worth investors that have been, who we've reached out and heard back from several, and they've been really good and instrumental in helping us achieve things like our company valuation and adding value in other ways, either now immediately in terms of advice or potentially help and advice later on down the track when we're open. And I'll get my beer for this one because it's a bit of a celebration. There's some highlights and just some things that have gone quite well. One thing in particular that I want to start on, it's a good opener, is our social media campaign and just the path that we've been on to get where we are now has been really solid, and we've really got to thank Reese for that, because that comes from a really solid vision, a consistent vision of how we want to present ourselves to the world. And from that, we've had quite a lot of likes and engagement for what is a new business. Numbering the 1,000 or so before we're even open. And what that tells us is the audience and the fan base that we're building is a really passionate and engaged one. So we also wanted to take that a lot further. We're first off stunned and really thankful for all the support that we've had from the general public out there. But we wanted to take that passionate fan base and give them another avenue as well, which is the Future Magic Ambassadors Facebook group, where there's a bit more personal content from Reese and myself, a couple more either company updates or little bits of sharing success, or a few little releases that don't get released to the general public, or might hear about a new beer early, something like that. So if you are on Facebook, check that out. On top of that, in terms of other media and things, I've recently been on a podcast with Dan, the owner of Black Ops, and another brewing mate of mine, Hendo. So check that out as well. That was the Boss and the Brewer podcast. So that would be the latest episode of that. And then in terms of actual beer and company success, we've had a couple of beer launches in some craft beer bars around Brisbane, and the feedback from customers and the venues has been fantastic. The beers were really, really well received, and we've actually been invited back for more than just those venues. We had a couple of beers that are coming out during the live offer phase of this campaign that actually pre-sold before we even have brewed the beer. We're in probably now, I'd say, most, if not every, significant craft beer bar in Brisbane, which is for a beer that's not even brewed, is quite an achievement, I feel. And along with that, we wanted to also collaborate, give back to this industry that's been so supportive. So our neighbors down at Black Ops, we really wanted to make that a good little hub for East Brisbane, a really nice place with two great venues for people to go to. So we're doing a collaboration beer with Black Ops. That should be, I'm actually organising that with those guys tomorrow, and we'll release details on that as soon as we know more ourselves. But with collaborations, we didn't want to stop there. We see it as an opportunity to be able to secure and safeguard a bit of our production as well. Make sure that we know where some of our beer is, it always has a future home. So with the guys that are installing our fans, they go out on sales calls and things all the time. And they often want to leave a little parting gift, something to remember, something for the companies to remember them by. And we posited that there's no better gift than the gift of beer. And they tended to agree. So we're brewing a beer with and for those guys. And that'll be an initial cost saving for us on our fans and a little bit of install costs, but then like an ongoing payment for those beers as well. So securing a little bit of that has been quite nice. And now the next most popular question, and one that was actually asked on the Facebook and the ambassadors group the other day, is why crowdfunding in particular when there's so many other ways to raise capital? Crowdfunding is something that we thought about and agreed upon in very early days, because it really ties into that community aspect. We really wanted to create a community and give everyday people the chance to share in a fairly common dream of being part of opening a brewery. Being able to give regular folks a slice of that is fantastic. And why crowdfunding as opposed to other forms of investment from just a capital raising perspective? The fact that you go through an expression of interest phase, it helps you gauge your market's interest for your product. It really gives you access to a lot more people, a lot more investors than you'd probably be able to get access to yourselves. It's kind of like Reese said the other day, it's like Tinder for investment. Which I wasn't sure if I was going to say that on here, but I think it fits. Yeah, so compared to traditional investment, setting up a brewery is a very capital intensive thing. It's quite cash flow intensive as well. You have a lot of equipment you need to buy, and you need to make sure that things get done in the right order, and all of this before you open and start making revenue. We've done that. We've managed that money so far in a good way, and this crowdfund is going to help us be able to get there in a higher capacity than we otherwise would have. Most seeking traditional investment, unless you're saving up and funding it yourself, which is another way to do it, it kind of becomes a bit of a labor of love then. Most seeking traditional investment, it can be quite tough. It can be expensive going to venture capitalist companies, and there's no guarantees like we have with a expression of interest phase. You've got no gauge of market interest. So going through crowdfunding, where you can get access to a community and build a community of people and gauge that interest, has been really, really important. And now I want to hand over to Reese and start talking a little bit about our actual products and design and show off some nice, pretty cans.
Cool, thank you, Sean. No worries. So yeah, I guess to start off with this slide, you'll see our current core range of beers. This is about 2 years worth of us doing market research and development with test batches of beer and iterations on graphic design. We partnered with a really reputable and one of the market leading industry graphic designers out of Melbourne named Pocket Beagles. His name's Clint. He's been absolutely exceptional to work with, and he helped us realize this dream of the labels and branding that you see in front of us here. So from this side going in this direction here, you'll see that we've got a beer that's called Welcome to Paradise, and it's a typical American style West Coast IPA. This one is kind of the beer that most people fall in love with when a brewery opens, is kind of the concept of searching for that dream of that West Coast IPA. It's inspired by a couple of things. The first one would be Welcome to Paradise, the song by Green Day from the 90s, and also Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. So we've got some pretty cool and interesting themes going on in
Paradise City.
In Paradise City. Yeah. There's actually a quote on the blurb that says, "Take me down to the Paradise City." But we'll let you guys explore that in further detail later on. The next beer in our lineup is Solar, which is our lager, and it's paying homage to the sun. Beers really can't exist with the sun not being there as such, so it's us paying homage to the kind of process and procedure of grain and fermenting. We then have, Galaxy Dust. My bad, I skipped that one. This is based around the Australian hop named Galaxy, with some other iterations as well, but it's paying homage to one of our Aussie hops. And then we have our story that we've already kind of heard already, which is the Magic Stick. And Magic Stick is based around that story of the Magic Stick using Scandinavian brewing, and very specifically the concept where the brand name comes from, being that the waiting period between when you ferment the beer and then when it becomes the magic of drinking that experience. One really cool thing I'd love to share as like an exclusive for our chat today is that we do have a fifth beer that's not actually in this lineup. And the idea is that we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we want our community to help us to create our most important beer. So the most important beer for any Australian brewery technically would be a pale ale. So in the coming weeks/months, we're going to be doing a bit of a community initiative where we want you guys to help us to name that beer and come up with the concept for that beer. It's a really important beer for us, and we hope that shows how committed we are to our community by letting them help us with that naming structure. From there, I would love to just talk you through the kind of concepts of the ranges of beer that we will have. So obviously we've seen the 4 existing core range beers, but at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see some interesting artwork. So we have 3 styles of beer that we'll be starting off with. The first being core range, obviously. The second will be seasonal beers that will be based around like fruited sours and making sure that we're always using the freshest produce that we can get our hands on. Definitely from our local community in Brisbane, but also from the rest of Queensland, and trying to have a focus on Australian produce during that process. Always making sure it's the freshest and most accessible fruits and adjuncts that we can get our hands on. And then at the bottom, you'll see we have some limited release beers, and these are actually the 2 of the beers that Sean was alluding to that were coming out during our end of expression of interest into our actual campaign. So we have a beer that is called Meteorite Stout, as you may have guessed, and you may have seen on our socials already as well. We actually got our hands on a tektite, which is the remnants of a meteorite when it hits the earth, and we've brewed a stout already, which Sean has done, as you may have seen on the socials. So these are beers that are intended to have really cool kind of word of mouth and storytelling. We really believe in the kind of virality of storytelling and telling your mates about cool concepts. So our special release or limited release beers will be quite interesting in their recipes and their kind of concepts. On the right-hand side of there, you'll see a beer that is called Seeing Double, and this is our first double IPA, and it's based on the concept of a Maneki Neko, which is a Japanese concept, which I'm sure you've probably seen when you go into a restaurant and there's a little cat on the counter with its hand that moves. And there's a bit of a hidden symbolism in this beer, and the concept is that if you wear 3D glasses, you can see that there's a blue and a red cat. And the concept is that in the culture of this beckoning cat is that if the left paw is raised, it means that you're attracting customers. And if the right paw is raised, it means that you're trying to attract good fortune. And for us as a startup, we need both of those things. So it's a little bit of a hidden symbolism that we're going to be sending this beer out to venues with some sort of 3D glasses to experience that you can close one eye or the other and see both of those different cats. So that's just a breakdown of our initial concept. We are really hoping to do some things like barrel aging and wild ferments and so forth, but I'll pass back to Sean and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Reece. Wanted to show as well as the products, the venue that we've got. So you've heard about it so far and knowing where it is, saying Manila Street. But I wanted to give you some context. Before I get too much into the inside, I wanted to go on the outside and kind of the environmental, go a bit higher level first. One of these is so important. Part of this is so important that we actually made it a conditional part of our lease. So with funds from this capital raise, we're going to be putting solar panels on the roof to make sure that we're lessening our impact from the electrical standpoint. And I've also designed the brewery in a way that is as environmentally friendly and efficient as possible. I will get just slightly nerdy for a second. Breweries are all about temperature management. Essentially, you're heating some things up at the same time you're cooling others down. It's a nightmare for efficiency. So what we've decided to do is something that's becoming a lot more common now. Is when we're using water to cool something down, instead of that then hot water going down the drain, it actually goes back into another one of our tanks. So we're not having to fill that tank with fresh water every time. So we're using less water, and we're also only then maintaining a temperature. We're not heating the water and using more energy than we need. And then in terms of waste as well, it's fairly common for breweries to get farmers to take away their grains. That's something that we're definitely looking at doing, is looking at other ways that we can recycle that what would be waste product. The ideal kind of cyclical scenario is brewers get grains, brewers use grains, they give them to a farmer to feed livestock. That livestock ends up back in the form of a consumable product, where you can then serve that product in your tap room. So you're serving a product that has been fed on the same ingredients that's in the glass that you're drinking. If it's good enough for you, it should be good enough for animals. It should be good enough to help feed and nourish a whole ecosystem rather than just one use type of thing. But these photos are venue renders that would represent kind of the venue at full capacity. So we're opening the funds from this crowdfund campaign. We're trying to use them in a smart way that's quite tiered. At full capacity, we're able to open more spaces like the mezzanine or outside, and that then increases our capacity, which then in turn increases our profitability. So there's a direct correlation between the amount that's invested and the potential success of the company, and the better that investment could be seen to be. So I really wanted to highlight that point. Is the better venue we can make this, the better venture it can hopefully be for all of us. In terms of the building itself, it's a gorgeous open space. There's plenty of potential for expansion. We've got that expansion plan set in a few phases. The first phase will be focusing still mainly just in tap room, making sure that tap room is as good as it can possibly be. We're serving as many happy customers. The beer is fantastic, and really focusing very, very local. After that, the next phase is starting to branch out into wholesale markets and widening that community a little more than we can from just one single tap room. And then after that, it's really starts to widen out significantly, and probably will entail us increasing production with either another satellite production brewery, which would be supported by another satellite tap room, something like that. And this is where the experience from brewing at Ballistic, from my perspective, comes in, with being able to brew at that kind of large scale. And that is, unless you had anything else, Reese, that is what we had for this. And I'd love now to hand over to any of you guys that have any questions. There's still plenty more that we can talk about. Talk about the rewards that we've got planned for investors, any other potential growth plans, how we're going to communicate more on the environmental, social, and governance aspects. Hand over back to you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, guys. It's so insightful, and I really love just hearing a little bit more about your plans for the business and your vision for the future of the business, and sort of that full cycle approach of renewable resources. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, as Sean mentioned, I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for everybody to use the Q&A feature and ask any questions, because now we've got the rest of the time allocated to answering your questions here. Jackson, thank you so much for going in and asking a question already. What are the tap room capacity numbers from launch to scale up? Over to you guys.
Yeah, so from launch, we're able to. So the tap room itself is about 400. It's about 400 square meters or so. Yeah. And we're looking to be able to seat anywhere from 170 to 200. It depends a little bit on what areas of the tap room we're able to activate based on capital raise. Got it. Completely understand. Then you've had another question here saying there's lots of good breweries in Brisbane. What are you doing to set yourself apart? Why does someone sort of make the decision to head to your brewery or buy your cans at the bottle shop instead of going with the wealth of other options available?
Yeah, I think probably the main thing is that being community focused, you get access to both of us. There are a lot of breweries that we go to personally, and obviously we do know some brewers and people in the industry that we can connect with on a different level to most people in society as such. But yeah, we'll be public facing, front facing, ready for a chat, ready to receive feedback, and kind of, we really want the community to be part of the decision making process. So I've got some pretty crazy and elaborate ideas that I'll be sharing with people, and I want them to give me feedback, like just. Like, for instance, with the meteorite beer, I brought it up as a concept, and I'm like, is this too far out? Do people not like this? Is it too much for people to take on board? Sure. And we obviously refined it a little bit. But yeah, we want the community to give us ideas and be our public voice and be our storytelling and be that virality or that viral nature of telling their friends, and it just expands and becomes more and more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you've had a question here. Are you planning to do traditional slabs at 24 or stick with the new 16 size?
Most likely 16. You fit a fair bit more on a pallet. There's several reasons for it. We're not opposed to it though, so if the market, that will be one of the things that we'd want to kind of market test a little bit. And we don't have a solid answer on. My initial work has been based on 16s though.
Yeah,
I think probably the big thing is our first phase is going to be in tap room experience, and there'll be takeaways. So I would hope and expect that people would probably want to try most of the beers in like a 4-pack or maybe a single. And obviously there will be the avenues to buy online and pick up from store and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a follow-on question from that as well is, what price point are you aiming for with your beers?
The average was, we have that number for kind of schooner, and this is across an average across all beers. It's around about $12 for a schooner, which is kind of market average. Yeah, it's not too far off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've had a question here around how you're dealing with general inflation, like production and operational costs. I think every business is conscious of this at the moment and how to deal with it. And I don't think anybody has the answers because it's happening, it's changing week by week. So
the main thing is that we can lock in our pricing with contracts over the course of a couple of years for things like hops and grain.
That's true.
A lot of raw materials you can organize a reasonable price for a certain amount of time. Obviously those agreements can potentially change, but that's something that we're reliant on those suppliers. We'll do the right thing by them, they'll do the right thing by us.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. And will you barrel age beers?
Oh yes. That's another. I was talking about the crowdfund campaign being able to potentially add value to the business and give us other avenues for profitability and things like that. Something that is sometimes quite cost prohibitive, especially for a new brewery, is barrel aging. So we want to leap into that straight away if the funds allow. Definitely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because I love barrel aged beers. The extra depth of flavor and kind of, you chuck beer in a barrel and unless you're buying a new barrel, you kind of get the story of that barrel along with the beer as well, and the barrel itself can tell part of the story that you end up passing on to customers. It's a really cool thing that I want to engage as soon as we can. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, personally love a barrel aged beer myself as well, so very, very pleased to hear your answer. Chris here has asked a question: how do you have plans for interstate distribution yet, or are you just focusing on Brisbane for now? We do want to. This is a question that we've had commonly. We've had, are you going to ship to the UK? Are you going to ship to the US? Are you going to expand into overseas markets? For the first little while, we need to, as I said, with that phase one, focus on the tap room, because that's where you really kind of establish yourself and a following for your business and really get to hone in on your brand and what your customers want. But those opportunities do present themselves, and we're aware, because this crowdfund campaign is going out to people all across the country. We're aware that there will be some interest interstate, and we don't want to deny those people. We just need to see exactly what that looks like when we're closer to the time. But that is something that we want to plan on doing. Yeah, of course. Of course. And the number of questions coming through the chat, I've always got to scroll up because then I'm ready for the next question, and then somebody adds another one in there, so I've got to move back up through. But what's the so what size is the initial brew system, and what size can you sort of scale up to in the future? I know that this is probably something every brewery systematically thinks about. Okay, do we get equipment to be able to do this? There's
spreadsheets, there's brewery planning spreadsheets that say if you have this, you have this size of brew house and this number of vessels, how much beer can you make in a year, and here's your split of what you put into kegs and cans. It's really, I said I was getting a little bit nerdy before. Don't get me started on spreadsheets, please. Everyone will be bored. But yeah, we're going. It's a 10 hectoliter system, which is 1,000 liters. And able to do kind of 2 turns in a day on that, so be able to produce 2,000 liters in a day. So we've got 80,000. So we've got 80 hec, so 8,000 liters of fermentation capacity. So we've got two 2,000s and 4 1,000 liter fermenters, and then we've got a 2,000 liter storage and conditioning tank and 3 1,000 liter serving tanks. So they're connected directly to tap. So it's a cool tap room experience that you don't really see that often in Brisbane craft breweries. I think Stone and Wood has some, but it's not something that you see that commonly. It's really good for the beer. It's better for our labor costs, and it's a really cool thing because your customer sees a tank, they see a pipe that goes to a tap, and someone's pouring the beer out of it. You go, oh, my beer's coming out of there. That's really cool. Yeah, it's a customer service thing, and it's also better for the beer thing. So we should have plenty of fermentation and beer storage capacity, and yeah, we should be able to get roughly it's 150,000 liters a year out of the system currently. Fantastic. But in terms of expansion, we're building expansion into the brewery, so we've got spots pre-marked out for where we're going to put extra fermenters, extra vessels in the years to come. Yeah. So we're marking those out now to build that expansion capacity in, because the venue does have such a capacity for it. We would be able to get up to about 400,000 liters a year out of that venue before we have to look at going somewhere else.
Wow.
As Sean mentioned, just we have this footprint that we can kind of copy and paste as a good analogy to double our footprint. It sounds crazy, but we inspected like 40 to 50 properties to get to the point where we were happy with the things like location and meter region and so forth. And this was the one that allowed us to kind of, instead of having to go and find like a new lease in a new location, we can basically become double the business in the same footprint that we have.
That's awesome. And you've already got a question about the specific location of the brewery itself. I know it's going to be in Brisbane. Where specifically is the site located?
If you jump onto Apple Maps or Google Maps or any maps and search for Future Magic, you'll drop a pin and you'll see exactly where it is. So it's amazing. It's on a little industrial kind of precinct that has a lot of coffee roasteries and obviously black hops and some printing and that kind of business. It's on a street that's called Manila Street on the corner of Waterloo Street.
Amazing.
It's actually 4 or 5 blocks from the Gabba, so great spot for a pre or post game.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you've got a question here around what percentage of your build you're hoping to fund through this campaign.
That's around, well, answer that would be probably around 20%.
Yeah, okay.
I would say most of it we've been able to fund with the capital that we've put in as founders.
Yeah.
So it'd be those extra little bits and pieces at the end that really take it from being a functional place to a great place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
It can be up to 50% if it's the max subscription. We'd be getting pieces of equipment that we wouldn't be getting otherwise. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, all good, all good. And a question here from Anthony saying, sorry, I missed the start of the meeting, so I'm not sure if it has been covered. Are you planning on having other venues stock your product in the future, either on tap or on retail bottle shops? I know that we've covered a question around distribution, where you're going, and you've kind of already answered that in a fair amount of detail. But yeah, in terms of tap takeovers and other retail bottle shops, I'm sure that's part of your strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I will recap it for you since you missed it. It's all good. That we've got some beers that are coming out into other venues in the coming weeks during the live offer phase of the campaign, and that's something that we want to continue. We want to continue having a presence just outside our tap room initially, just due to the fact that it'll be us that are sending kegs and driving kegs out to places. It'll be probably local, Brisbane through the Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast type of areas initially that'll be getting kegs and things like that. We will have wider shipping options for cans and cartons through the online store, so you'll be able to buy online and either pick up from the brewery or there will be a shipping fee to ship it wherever we can get it to. Hopefully everywhere in the country, at least. Hopefully.
Fantastic. And do you have DA approval for the site that you're currently building? And what is your leasing arrangement?
Yeah, sure. The DA's underway, so that's kicking along nicely so far. We've not had anything too onerous. It's
Awesome.
mostly in place already.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's there's not too much else. That we've just been granted our excise license this morning.
Yeah.
Well, so other licenses, liquor licenses, and things like that are starting to get underway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably the important thing to say as well is we have engaged industry professionals, so town planners and so forth, that we're not doing it ourselves on the whim. We have a really good team behind us.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. That's awesome. And a question here that's come through, I'd love to see, once profitable, how do you see investors getting a return later in the future? I know that you guys will probably have a bit of a vision for this, and the craft brewery space is one of the most active in terms of acquisitions that happen in the market out of a lot of other industries. When you do see startups effectively be built and then typically sometimes sold off, it's important to state that the funds used in this raise will purely be used to grow the business. And as you are investing into a private proprietary limited company, which is privately held shares, the funds are not going to be easy, or the shares themselves are not easily sold, bought and sold like they are on a stock exchange. So typically, you do think, when you do think about the journey of investing into an early stage startup, you definitely want to think about it being a few years of a relationship with that company, and something that you will hold for a number of years, and therefore take that into account when you think about the amount that you're looking to invest into the company itself. But over to you guys to really answer this from your perspective.
That summed it up perfectly. We're really it's a growth investment, and we're looking to grow with those people that are coming on board, and really get that ongoing relationship and share in each other's success. And that's one thing that I think makes the early stage business an attractive one, especially in a pretty high growth industry like craft beer. A lot of companies that are raising capital may have already been through that initial high growth phase, where the value of the company can increase really significantly in those first couple of years. And getting in nice and early as opposed to getting in later in the piece has there's a fair bit of kind of upside potential in that, and that's what we want to focus on. Yeah,
awesome. Actually, love to see this question, because you really did talk about other breweries and taking inspiration and learning from them. But Matt here has asked if what are some of your favorite breweries, beers? Who do you currently take inspiration from?
How long do we have for this?
We've got 15 minutes left. We've probably got about 45 minutes.
We've still got a few other questions, so hold back.
Right, you go first, then I'll go. We'll try and make it as few as possible.
The very short answer would be come and speak to me face to face, and we can spend hours discussing the ins and outs of beer and brewing and history. It's absolutely something I'm fascinated about.
Yeah.
In terms of our local market, in terms of around Brisbane, as we've already mentioned, I think Black Ops has got to be one of the most inspirational stories of the last 10 years. Also, I was so proud of Sean when he started working for Ballistic, because they've done amazing things in our market also. But there's also so many great little breweries around. Like, there's places that people probably even haven't realized exist. Like, there's a place called Fick, which is an amazing place that does Belgian style inspired beers. There's places like Ether do great seasonal beers. Like, honestly, like I just can't do justice to.
We're spoiled of choice up here, really. The craft beer community and scene in Brisbane is phenomenal. Yeah. Me personally, in terms of other beers, maybe just outside here, I have a real soft spot. I'm sure you can probably guess why, for English beers. So a lot of the bitters, milds, porters and stouts. So unsurprisingly, winter in terms of beer is by far my favorite season, when you start getting all those nice dark malty beers out. That said, there's nothing better than a nice mango passion fruit sour on a summer day, or sitting there in the sun with a hazy IPA. It's good. I'm just a beer fan.
Yeah.
I'd have to echo Reese and say that in particular, especially in terms of crowdfunding and just overall business success, the Black Ops story is one that is really near and dear to what we want to hopefully be able to model some of, and to have them down the road as such great neighbors has been awesome. Yeah, they've been really, really good neighbors to have around.
Yeah, Black Ops are, fantastic to be able to watch their growth and effectively even to see their significant revenue jump from the first campaign that they did back in 2019 to their next campaign. It was just so fantastic because there were so many ingredients that they got right as a business, and the community that was in place as a business was really just so strong, that revenue just really, I think, just showed what the business had been working very hard at for a number of years to be able to achieve. And I can see that you guys have already been very, very community focused from the very beginning. So that's clearly been a focus of yours.
Well, the thing is that they end up, that community that you build through this, they end up coming in the tap room, and you know them by name, and they're your best customers and your best advocates for your business.
Yeah.
That's a big part of why we wanted to do this, is to help create that a place for those people to feel special, and us to be able to make them feel special. You know what I mean?
Definitely. No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. We'll have to move on to another question because we've got to try and cover these other ones off. I'd love to catch up with you guys afterwards on that topic though. But we've got a question here. At the moment, does Future Magic make a balance between incoming and expense?
We're pre-revenue at the moment because of licensing. Even though we are putting beers out in the market, they're a bit of a marketing exercise and nothing more. We can't legally make profit from those beers. What we gain from that is being able to get our beer to all of you and have it pass your lips. So we're a pre-revenue business. As soon as we open, we'll be able to be getting to that balance. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Wayne here has mentioned a comment. One thing I love about Ballistic's tap room is the space for families and kids to play. Does your location lend itself to something similar? Would it be a family-friendly space? And is that your target market?
Definitely. I'm a father of two myself, and Reese is soon to be. So that's something that we want to definitely make sure that it's not exclusive to those people. Definitely not. We want it to be inclusive to whoever wants to come.
We're throwing in dog friendly as well.
Oh yeah. Who doesn't love a brewery dog?
Fantastic. I've actually even seen there are dog specific bars popping up in the US, and I thought that it's not going to be long until we see one dotted across cities in Australia. I'm sure there probably are for some people who are really focused on that, but I just thought, why not have these awesome breweries just be dog friendly, and then people will just go along to just even say hi to the dogs, and then of course grab a beer while you're there. It would absolutely be a great space for all. So that's fantastic to hear. There's a question which more of a statement. I've driven past the site. It has great city views to sit and watch the sunset. That's fantastic. Jackson below, how have you forecasted your revenue profit stream in a heavily saturated market? So just in terms of projections, for these offers and these offer documents which are put together in the crowdsource funding industry, regulated by ASIC effectively state that projections need to have a reasonable basis to be able to be presented as a company. Now, like that reasonable basis, while it might be perceived subjectively, that does require a lot of prehistorical revenue to be able to then assume that the company might be able to grow by 10% the next year, effectively, as Future Magic and Sean has stated, is pre-revenue. There won't be any projections in the offer document itself, but the offer document will absolutely consume an awful lot of information about the strategy, the use of funds moving forward. And of course, you've already talked about the vision and what the brand stands for and why you're raising the funds itself. I'll hand over to you to add.
Exactly right. We're unfortunately not able to speculate legally on that. So what I've tried to speak to is the success and growth of the craft beer industry as a whole, and
Awesome.
compared to other similar stage, maybe slightly further up along the way up, but similar stage businesses that have also crowdfunded, and try to make our offer and everything reasonable and considerate of that.
Fantastic. And to follow up on the question earlier around return on investment, is the goal long term to get acquired? Where do you see the business potentially going in 5 to 10 years?
I know this question would come up.
Yeah, I know it does come up, and of course you're probably thinking about the immediate focus of building the tap room, and then every now and then when you sit back and you look at this, where you go, well, we really want to build this tap room, and then focus on opportunities in front of us. But of course, I think it's a really key aspect, because investors are coming into these businesses, and of course you're a private company, and so they can't be easily sold. But it's really important to understand your vision as founders for how those investors are going to be able to get a return on their investment, and what avenues you might consider in the future.
Yeah. We want to put those investors and those concerns first. Our kind of, if you want to call it a buyout strategy, it's a growth strategy. We want the business to grow first, and that's what we want to focus on.
Fantastic. Andrew here has asked a great question. Sorry, I missed it earlier, but when does the initial offer open? Was that limited to those who have registered for the EOI through Birchal? I'll state just a technicality. People who haven't submitted an EOI will be able to make an investment even during that private period, but they won't be sent the details and effectively let them know when the offer opens. Therefore, like, effectively, you're not going to be in the know in regards to when the offer opens and when that exclusive period for the investment offer is open itself. So yeah, over to you guys to explain when you're opening up.
Yeah, so it's opening. The private offer opens next week on the 1st, next Monday, and then 2 days later on the Wednesday it opens to the public.
Awesome, fantastic. And for anybody who hasn't expressed interest to invest and wants to be able to see the details of the offer as soon as it does open, please do make sure that you express interest to invest. I will follow up with everybody here, providing you with the recording for the webinar in case that was a question that usually comes through, and also just a link to be able to express interest into the business. Emily, great question. Being a pre-revenue business, can you explain how you have benchmarked your valuation?
Yes, sure. That's a combination. So I mentioned we had some high net worth investors that reached out and have offered their help and guidance, and that's with benchmarking that our valuation with those guys that are helping to come to a number that meets in the middle, and then obviously consulting with lawyers and accountants and getting that advice that to fill in any gaps that we may have on how best to position ourselves in the market.
Fantastic. And really just going through all of these questions, I feel like we've covered so much in terms of the business and in terms of the future itself. We have come to the end of the questions there, which is pretty perfectly timed, I would have to say, really with where we're at. But I really wanted to highlight, and actually I'll ask you a question there, Chris. So thanks very much for adding it there. Will there be any additional benefits for investors, such as discounts or merchandise? Obviously you guys are wearing a lot of it, so yeah, I can imagine people are keen to get their hands on it.
Yeah. There will definitely be, in our offer document, there'll be a breakdown table that explains the level of investment with the level of rewards kind of thing. Consider things like, t-shirts, hoodies, caps, all that kind of business, and also taproom discounts, online discounts, and so forth.
Fantastic.
What's that? Free
Brew days with me.
Brew days with you.
Things like brew days as well. And there will definitely, I can certainly say there'll be some beer involved.
Yes. There is one tier where you get your first beer in the tap room free each day that you come, and there's also one tier where you can actually help us to name some of our stainless steel tanks. And we're thinking things, we can't be too direct with trademark issues, but sci-fi characters and other really cool
I
things.
love that. I really love that. That's awesome. That's awesome, guys. Well, look, I think really covering so many of those details and covering that point is a fantastic place to finish this webinar today. And I wanted to hand over to you guys to make any final comments, closing remarks, or really just cover anything that you feel like we haven't covered in enough detail for everybody here in attendance today.
I feel like we've covered as much as we possibly could have in the limited time that we had. I just really wanted to thank everybody for being open and honest with questions. And if you wanted to keep the conversation flowing, feel free to reach out and contact form on the website, and we'll get back to you. Really want to keep a nice open line of communication with the community. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming along to the webinar, and for those of you that have expressed interest already, we can't thank you enough. And we'll see you when the live offer opens. Yeah, and I think the thing to finish up on would just say that consider this to be a two-way street and a two-way conversation. We want to get as much feedback as we possibly can, as many ideas as we can about anything you could possibly imagine. Any resource that you can help us with, or any people that you'd like to introduce us to, we're definitely open to having a chat with them.
That's fantastic, guys. That's fantastic. Well, look, I'm really excited to see your offer open next week. It's been such a great journey so far to be working with you guys on this campaign. And thank you to everybody who's attended here today. Like I said, the questions have been great. Guys, you've been fantastic. And I just, really can't wait to see the offer launch. So for everybody who's here today, I will send you a recording of the session if there's anything that you want to go back over. But thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you soon. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.